by the people, and she also had a means of. The younger people used to identify with her, and they used to call her Thia Kostaninya. Thia is they're not Thia, Thia. And there are people now that sort of just a little bit older than me, maybe another 10 years older than me, can remember her, and they speak very fondly of her and how the things she used to say. So she was able to span the generations. She wasn't somebody, whereas my mother's mother, she was very much in a hierarchical system, and she was the head of the whole lot, and expected people to sort of bow and scrape to her a bit, in the sense. Whereas my grandmother was, very much a people's person, and I suppose some of those elements have come out in me. I certainly like to be with people.
It sounds like your grandmother earned it rather than expected it.
Oh yes. Well, see, she came from a small family. She was the youngest, actually, of the family, and we don't know a lot about her family. Her maiden name was Agapitu, which means something like love. Agapitu. Her niece finished up in the Congo, and with her husband at the time when it was the Belgian Congo, and I can distinctly remember having to take parcels to the post office as a kid to send clothes, because they were very poor over in the Congo. Clothes, things of value that would be of value to them, money sometimes, and that's another thing that my grandmother used to stir my mother up with. And my grandmother would be sending stuff to her niece in the Congo, and my grandmother never sent anything to her when she was on Castellorizo. She had a bit of a parapono, as they say, and the whole thing was that my grandmother and my grandfather on Castellorizo were not poor. They weren't rich, but they and I think my grandmother felt that there was no need to send anything, whereas these other people, they virtually they had no clothes, and they were there at the time when there was a bit of an uprising. And you might ask, why'd they go to the Congo? Well, they went there because there was mining and all sorts of things, copper mining, and there was probably work. When really they should have come to Australia. But I did catch up with the cousins a few years ago. That's the sort of further, the younger people.
Yeah.
And in Greece. And after the Congo, they went down to South Africa. They sort of escaped down to there, and they did very well in South Africa. And then they went back, and they all retired back in Athens, and they're all very well off. So from the time that they were just barely able to exist, they had the drive, and they did okay.
What did you get from your grandfather?
What did I get? In what way?
Characteristics. How old were you when?
Well, I was 9 when she passed away, and it was a bit of a shock, because she hadn't been well, and then I came home from school and they said, "Oh, Grandma passed away." I mean, she was in bed at home, and Oh, she didn't look that good, but obviously there's something wrong with her. I think she might have had, looking back, she might have had some sort of a cancer or something that might have obstructed her bowel or something like that. It was that sort of thing, you know. So, no, I think I'd say patience was one thing I got out of her. A respect for others. I'm not a person that tries to take advantage of people, and I suppose she wasn't that type, and neither was my father or my mother, you know, I mean, so you know, I try and respect other people's position, but if somebody does something to me that I feel that I've been let down, or they try and take advantage of me, then I just wipe them. Bang. There's no two bits about it. I just because I can't be bothered with those sort of people. If I feel that you know, I mean, I've helped a lot of people, and I don't really want anything in return. But if if somebody comes along, I mean, to give you an examples, in this olive business, the number of people who want to come and rub shoulders with me is no joke, you know. And I can tell, you know, what they're up to. And I mean, people, you can see it's advantageous to be around me. Now, those sort of people, I just, you know, push to the side. If I feel somebody is really interested, and you know, I can help them, then I do. You know, it's I suppose the person you are is the net sum of all the past people and the environment. That's what makes you, I suppose.
The young Greek taxi driver in Athens referred to the 1,000 grandfathers that came before him.
Did he?
In your case, it's the 1,000 grandfathers and grandmothers.
Yeah. I never met my grandfather, so I don't really know what they were like. I mean, there are stories where they had tough times. My mother's father, who I'm named after, Evstathios is my Greek name. Evstathios. Evstathios. Which means, if you translate it, it's the same word, same name as Eustace. And Eustace means somebody who's placid. And so...
you weren't so placid yesterday at Fremantle.
In what way?
When we were coming out of the car park.
No.
So
Well, I mean,
placid totally, are you?
No. Now this is a cut they've done here. This is the river I was telling you about. Yeah. That's a river. Now that's what Perth would have been like prior to all the buildings in Perth. This is still a natural area, and because they're having trouble with salinity and all sorts of things, they put this cut that goes out to the sea. So this is a continuation of the Indian Ocean out there. Right there, okay.
Okay, still got me back on here now.
Hey?
So your father and your mother, what did you get from them?
No, I was going to tell you something about my grandfather.
Okay. Yeah.
My grandfather, he was a seafaring person, my grandfather. He married late as well, and he actually went and studied in Liverpool, speak English, and he had certificates where he'd actually done courses on various stages of becoming an actual identifiable person in the ranks of the sea, like bosuns, first mate, second mate. He's done certificates like that, and we're talking now before 1900, all that sort of stuff. Then he came back to Castellori, so I think he worked on some large ships as a third mate or something. He had some sort of rank, and then he came back and he started to have his own boats, like trading boats that would trade around the Mediterranean. Now, what I'm going to tell you now probably has a bit of mythology as well as truth, because I don't know exactly what happened. Okay, I can only put pieces together from what I've heard, even from my uncles and things. I don't know whether they were telling the truth, they were making up the stories or anything, because they were good raconteurs, my uncles. Unfortunately, they're all passed away. So but a typical thing would be, my grandfather had this. He had many boats. They would tend to be the sailing boats with a couple of masts. So you imagine a two-masted sailing boat of 100 tons, a couple of 100 tons, that sort of boat. And the boat is parked in the harbour in Castellorizo, because Castellorizo had a magnificent harbour, a good all-weather harbour, and so that's why they were into the sailing boats. The boat's sitting in the harbour. There's like we were sitting at Kailis yesterday with having a meal around the water there. It's around the harbour, they call it Cordoni. They'd have all the little cafeteria, and everybody be sitting there drinking their coffees and playing their doubly and everything else. And it's winter time. Okay? The boats don't sail in the winter. Then the season is coming on. So the boats have to be made ready for the voyages. I'll digress a little bit. The Fakir's grandfather, his name was Kalafata. Okay. Now, Kalafata in Greek means a guy that puts the pitch in between the planks on the boat. Okay. So they were historically in their family, they were in that business. My grandfather had the boats. Okay. So, and if you're a capitano, as they say, it was better than being a doctor. It was the peak of the. If you had a boat and you're a capitano, you were top of the pops. Okay. So they get the boat ready. So what did that entail? To make sure the boat, all the sails are right. My grandfather used to sew up all the sails to make sure, if they were weak, and put all the ropes on. They take on provisions, and their provisions would be onions, baksumadia, cheese in brine, army, olives. That was the basic food. Okay, baksumadia. You know what a baksumadia is? The rusk. So they could dip it in the water. And water and coffee and sugar. That were the basic provisions, and they'd load the boat up ready. Then my grandfather had a crew of about 4 people, and he'd sail the boat out of the harbour over to Turkey, because our island is only 1 kilometre off Turkey. Okay, so Turkey was just over there. Okay. When they got to Turkey, the place they'd go to is called Kush, and they park the boat and they go to the Gaffinier, because where Castellorizo is, all that coast was Castellorizo as well. It was they had the mainland plus the island. So some of the families actually lived in Turkey, and there's a town there which is a ghost town, which is where the Kazis had their. It's there now, where the Kazis had their homes, and they often had homes both on the island and on there as well. Anyway, they get over there, and my grandfather would go to the Gaffinier, and he'd sit there, and he'd sort of have a coffee, and somebody would come along to him and say, his name was Eustathius. They used to call him Statito Chloru. His Chloru was another old name in the family, Chloru. And they'd say, look, we want to take some carvuna, which is carbon or charcoal, to Egypt. And they'd strike up a deal. And so then the bloke would go away, come back with his cart of charcoal, and then my grandfather's crew would load it all onto the boat. And then he'd wait until his boat had a full complement, if he could, full complement of stuff. So there might be other produce, there might have been olives, there might have been olive oil, because Turkey produced a lot of food, and whoever had the cargo would go on the boat with them, and then they'd sail, say, down to Port Said or Alexandria, and they'd park the boat, moor the boat on the harbour there, and then the trader would go off the boat and then find somebody to sell it to, because he knew the sort of people who were going to buy it, okay? And so my grandfather would be sort of cooling his heels a little bit, but what he would do, because the boat was going to be empty, he'd stock up on things that, like dates and things, nuts and dates and rice from the Nile, because that was a big rice growing area, coffee, all those things. But in the meantime, somebody might say to him, look, I want to take some watermelons over to Italy or something. And so the boat would get loaded up again, and if this other bloke had sold his charcoal, then my grandfather's crew would unload it onto wagons. So they were like the navvies who'd help sail the boat and do that. Okay? And he would sail as far as Marseille. And when he got to Marseille, he'd load up with bricks and tiles and slabs and all that sort of stuff. And you know how all these Mediterranean islands have all got these places with tiled roofs and everything? They didn't make the tiles, they had to come from somewhere. And so all this material, cement, whatever, wood for building, he'd backtrack the boat, bring it back. So, as I said, there's a bit of mythology in that, and but I think that's the gist of what he used to do. Now, my mother used to tell me stories about my grandfather at sea, where the Mediterranean was so rough, they had to be up 24 hours a day. They couldn't go to sleep. And my grandfather, to stay awake, he would take handfuls of coffee and just eat the coffee as a stimulant, because they couldn't light the fire or anything. And he was so tired, he'd have to eat this raw coffee. He'd have to be, tough. My grandfather actually, he was shipwrecked twice. Lucky to be alive. Managed to get into the little boat. A lot of Kazis didn't make it. Many times when the boats went out, they never came back. He disappeared for a year. But I think what it was, he must have been training around the place. I jokingly said, I wonder if he had another wife somewhere else, because he's only home for 6 months of the year, and he might have been somewhere else for the other 6 months. We might have some cousins somewhere else. But I don't think so. I think that was just I used to tell my mother that just to stir her up a bit. and you know, and you know how we talked about soy. They were of soy. I used to say to her, Mum, there must have been some people there that were a bit more loose on the island, you know, and she used to tell me off, you know, because I mean the island had about 10,000 people, so there must have been prostitutes. I mean, you just can't have 10,000 people without having something going on in the background. So, and the other thing too is that Turkey used to produce a lot of hash, and I don't know whether these guys in these boats, they used to cart the bloody hash around with them as well. You know, I mean, you just don't know what they were up to. That's still the river there.
That's still the river.
Yeah. So you can see, it's just like, to me, it's just what Perth would have been like, and this would be like, you know, there's high parts and then there's low parts.
Can we have a cup of coffee somewhere?
We'll stop and have coffee at the next place, eh?
Yeah, sounds good. All this talk of coffee.
Eh?
All this talk of coffee.
Yeah.
So, what was your mother like?
Well, I found her a person who had a lot of tragedy around her, and she wasn't able to actually move on from that. You know what I mean? Not a. And I think a lot of it was because my father was too far anglicised, and I don't think they were that close. I mean, my father respected my mother very much, and vice versa. But I don't think that for him, I think a lot of it was duty. He was quite dutiful, you know, husband. And the other thing is, my mother, looking back, she was a dependent sort of person. Like, for instance, it seems to me that when she was young, she depended upon her father a lot. And then when she came to Australia, she was depending upon my grandmother a lot, because my grandmother was far more streetwise and you know, in Australia, even though she could hardly speak a word of English, she knew what was going on. She was aware of the environment and everything else. And then when my grandmother died, my father took over that role of looking after her, a very dependent person. And when my father, and in later years, I looked after both my mother and father, and my mother was a widow for some 5 years, and she depended upon me. So she was a person that I think was highly dependent. Never really got on top of it, you know, from her own point of view. My aunties always say that my mother had it easy, because there's always somebody to look after her.
So they were her sisters, or?
They were her sisters.
And they were here, were they?
There was one here, her elder sister, the one that my father was going to marry. We'll stop at a coffee shop on this side, save us having to cross the road. There's one on that side, there's one on this side further down. This place over here is a bit dark and dingy. I don't like dark and dingy places. I mean, I felt sorry for her, because I think that she never really got on top of life.
Was she a fearful person?
Oh, very. She wouldn't. She she was sort of timid in a sense, like there's no way she'd say, to my father, let's go down to the beach and have a swim or something, or do anything different. Like my father never drove. Now if she'd have said, look George, we need to have a car to go and do things, then he would have done it, you know what I mean? But it wasn't for the lack of money, it's just that he lived in South Perth. The tram almost came from their house to the city, and all his requirements were within the tram, and he was in the city most of the time because he had the shop, and so it would have been a nuisance having to park the car. So really, but if she'd have said, look George, this is no good, we got to do something about this, he would have.
Was she also very aware of what other people were thinking and saying, and be careful in putting this on you? Sort of the guardian of what other people thought?
No, it was more physical things that her timidness. When it came to other people, she was quite aloof. I'd say people from the outside would have seen her as quite aloof.
Stuck up?
Yeah, a bit stuck up, yeah.
And what was she like as a grandmother to the kids?
It's interesting you say that, because the kids never really warmed up to her or to my grandfather, and I think the reason for that was that they were quite old. I mean, they do anything for the kids and buy them presents and everything else, but there was never a warmth. I mean, the kids never said, look, got to go down and see a yarn papu. And it's interesting, it's from both sides actually, so whether
from both sides, both grandparents?
Yeah, they never really you see a lot of kids, they go and stay with their grandma and things like that. Now I can understand it with my parents, they were just too hard. Too hard, My father was in, when the kids came along, my father was in his 60s, and I think he was just a bit too old. And I think also because he was an only child, he probably didn't have that ability to have that caring and loving of other kids. His life was one of survival in many ways and work. So he didn't have a lot of time for the emotional side of things. So he didn't have a history, and he had no nephews or nieces, he had no brothers we had to share things with. And it's interesting because I came up almost like an only child, because my brother was 8 years older than me. 8
years.
And so I effectively was an only child. And I don't know whether there's another one just down here. There's plenty of places to get coffee here. Yeah, I suppose it's a bit sad, that part of it.
So where did the kids get their Greek roots from?
Well, our kids don't have a lot of Greek roots, unfortunately. They're all individuals, and I suppose some of the behaviours of the Greek community we don't quite identify with. And that might be because we've travelled a lot and mixed out of the community a lot. I mean, a lot of the behaviours that Greek communities have tend to be when they've stuck together. Like we went to a wedding the other night and they had something like 10 bridesmaids. Now, to us, we see that as being over the top. That sort of thing. But in the Greek community, they see this as being, it was a great great wedding. They had 10 bridesmaids. You know, I mean, that was, you know, it was a blusi, what they call blusior wedding. And in other words, it had a certain richness about it. But at that particular wedding, to us, everything was done almost to a formula, and it was like a Clayton's wedding. I was wondering whether there was a wedding at all, because you just didn't have any. There was no real emotion in it. You know what I mean? You didn't. And I can remember going to weddings as a kid that, you know, it was a wedding. You know what I mean? It was really something. It wasn't just a couple of people having a wedding breakfast. It was, I mean, you could feel that, you know, the families were alive and on fire, and, you know, it was a wedding. But, you know, it's got to the point now, because a lot of the Greeks got money now. There's, I mean, a Greek wedding, if they can get out of under about 50,000, you know, that'd be a cheap wedding. So our views are that if we're going to spend 50,000, we'd rather, you know, put it towards something, a house or something for the kids, rather than, you know, waste it on a wedding and then just have a big wedding led. And that's the other thing. My view of a wedding is you invite everybody you want to invite. You don't say, well, I can't invite them because I can't afford to invite them. What you do is you design the wedding so you can invite people. Now, in this day and age, I think people realise that, you know, first of all, if you have a wedding, the number of people who go to the church, you can have any number in the church. It's not going to affect your costs. And then secondly, if you say, right, well, we're going to have a wedding, and afterwards we're going to go to the house and you know, we're going to have a drink and a snack. People are quite happy to do that, aren't they? I mean, because again, you go to the wedding to be with people. I mean, in fact, you go to a very expensive hotel. In fact, the wedding was at the Sheraton Hotel. You know, they had 300 people at the hotel. You know, they all marched in, and so we don't have that sort of. You know, that's an example.
So, what did you get for your father?
What did I get from my father? I suppose from my father, reliability, sense of responsibility, trying to do the best job I can do. You know, I mean, I don't personally believe in excellence as such. You know, I think excellence in many cases is something that can happen that you might just jag on. I mean, you try to do your best. Sometimes it might come out as excellent, other times it just comes out as your best. You know, I mean, it's I don't try and pick winners. I'm very happy to I mean, my style is to, if there's a job to be done, then I'll do it. I don't say, well, look, that job's not worthwhile doing, it's going to take me too long, I'll do these other things, it's quicker and it'll make more impact. I don't think like that, because in the long term you need to have all these things. You don't want to be considered to be somebody who comes in and takes opportunities, and when there's hard work to be done, you're not there to do it. And I think these are all things that you know, I've got from my father. He was a very honest bloke. I think that's, you know, something that I respected in him. You know, if he said something, he never went back on his word, and I'm the same. You know, I don't. Because sometimes people say to me, I'll say something, and they said, but you promised you were going to do something. I said, look, I never promise anything. If I say I'm going to do it, I will do it to the best of my ability. Now, if I haven't done something, there might be a reason. I might have forgotten. but I never promise anything. And you know, it's funny how people take when you say something that's a promise. I don't promise anything.
Daughters.
Hey?
Daughters.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But you promised. I didn't promise anything. But you said. Oh yes, I said. It's different.
So when did you learn your sense of fun?
I don't know whether I've had any real fun as such.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you call fun. What do you mean by fun?
What's in your face? That's sort of,
Well, put it this way, I'm very, I get a lot of enjoyment in what I do.
yeah.
If that's fun, then I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of people see fun as going to the disco. I don't see that as fun. Right? To me, that's not fun. I enjoy going to a place to have a meal. You know, somewhere. I mean, equally in my own home or going out. I don't know whether I have been excited to the point. Put it this way, I've done so many things in my life that other people consider that to be fun, and I've lost track of what fun is in that sense. I really have. Now, I mean, recently we went overseas to Italy and Crete and Sicily, and people say, gee, we had a lot of fun over there, but I don't know whether I had any fun. Fun as such. I enjoyed it, but coffee's coming. Here it is. Coming soon. Coming soon.
So where did you learn your seriousness from?
I think from my father. I think that's the problem, you see. You sort of... you can't... But the whole thing is I don't dwell on things, and I can turn things off. You know, I'm not sitting here thinking about all the serious things that I've got to do, because I've got to do a whole lot of things when I get back. But I just sort of say, well, the job will be done, and so I don't have to worry about it. There aren't too many things that I haven't said that I was going to do that I haven't done. I can't think of any really as such. But I suppose the thing that, if you said what would make you happy, in that sense, if my kids are happy, then that's what would make me happy. Outside of that, I don't think I could care. Because if they're unhappy, then I'm unhappy.
Did you spend a lot of time with your kids when they were kids?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with them. A lot of time. And we've travelled a lot. I mean, I've taken them overseas, over to Greece, over to Indonesia, New Zealand, interstate. One of the things we didn't do, though, I suppose, is, and there's probably a reason for that. My youngest one, he was an asthmatic, and that made it quite hard for us to do some things, because he didn't sort of, there was one stage there that he was sort of in and out of hospital with his asthma. I mean, he's 26 now, but he's much better. He's able to handle it, you know, hasn't had any problems, you know, for many, many years. And so, but at the time when he was sort of like 6 or 8, and the others would have been 10 and 12, when we might have sort of gone camping a bit more, or a bit more outdoor stuff, then you know, there might have been some other things like that. I mean, the other interesting thing is that we were always interested in going to the beach ourselves as individuals, you know, to the seaside. And we used to take them to the seaside, but none of them are really taking any interest in going to the sea for some reason. So they've, you know, we'd often go to the beach. We'd hire a house down by the beach for a few weeks and over the holidays and go swimming and everything else. But I think one of the factors for that might have been, first of all, my brother, he married about the same time as I did, and his kids were in the same environment as my kids, to the point where it created some difficulties in that their lifestyle was different to our lifestyle. And I think, like politically, we're on the left and they were on the right. The thing. And of course that creates a bit of a problem. Okay. And so it was hard for the kids. So we couldn't really have a good relationship as two families. And so immediately that sort of isolates our kids in some way. And then on Lefkir's side, her sister, that girl there, that Maria, now she's about 16, so she's 10 years younger than my youngest. So she had our kids had no other cousins to play with. And my brother-in-law, his kids are the same age as Maria. And so there was a lack of family around us to create that sort of closeness that I would have liked to have seen in the family. And that's something I really think has been a big deficiency in our family, and it has had a big impact. But as a result of that, our kids tend to be very much individual kids. But in other ways, it strengthened their resolve because they are very independent, whereas my brother's kids are still very dependent. You know, it was an unusual situation. Let's see if we can get a bit of parking over there. Oh, no. Bugger it. Oh. Please not park on the lawn. Is that lawn over there? This lawn over here?
Lawn to me.
It's lawn there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to park under this tree. Bugger it. I'll park under this on the sand over here. And they can't complain because if they call that lawn, yeah. Yeah. 1922, eh? So not that long ago, eh?
Appreciated those days. I mean, those days. 79.
Yeah.
No, on
Yeah.
the
Well,
way
that was probably the start of the resurgence of the area, about 79. You know, so what you see now is really just about 20 years of effort. Prior to that, there were no grapes here. And so they built up this industry, but I think what happened was there were a lot of doctors and lawyers and, you know, pretty astute sort of people, enthusiasts. Yeah, the same sort of.
Remember the line there?
I can't recite it.
You can't
No.
It was a tribute to
The early settlers.
the early settlers and all the endeavours that they had made.
Yes.
And this this generation were benefiting from it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like what you're saying.
Yep.
So it's not only Greeks that appreciate that, but also Australians.
Yeah. Right, now we're going to go to Stella Ridge. 5k's down the track here.
Difference between the olive people and the grape people?
There is a difference between the grape people of today and the olive people of today, but I would imagine the grape people of the past would be like the olive people of today.
They're right.
Yeah. Because they've moved on. They're 25 years down the track.
Yeah.
And so the way the grape industry started is similar to how the olive industry is starting now. It's in a number of stages. First of all, you have what they call early adopters, and they are people who are keen, they see possibilities, they're willing to take risks, and they're like gorillas in the field. They come in and they do the job, they're very enthusiastic. Then as time goes by, and during that early stage, there are usually few plantings. Others are looking on, but they say, oh, I don't know. They're a bit doubtful. And then when the next group start to see, hey, this is not too bad, then there's an increase in the plantings, and then this is like an S-shaped curve. It starts off flat and then goes up like an S, and so there's sort of an accelerated planting, and at that point you get, let's say, more respectable people going into the industry. In other words, people who've got more leadership other than the sort of gorillas in the field. And I'm going to let this car go past. And and out of that, you start to see associations formed, and the president of the association usually is somebody who's highly respected in the district or within the region, and that adds sort of respectability to the process. You still have the knockers, but then as more plantings come in, people start to say, well, maybe we're becoming saturated, and then you get the top of the S curve, and that top of the S curve, you get people who will still plant, but a lot of people have missed the boat. Because it's like a wave. They miss the boat, and but you never eliminate all the skeptics. There's always somebody who says, "Oh, olives, they're never going to be any good. They're going to be," and they're the sort of people who say, "Is there going to be a saturation of the market?" No, this is one of the vineyards. It's quite impressive. Amadeus sounds like Amadeus was German, wasn't he? That Strauss, what was his name?
Plato, maybe?
No. He was the guy that was a movie made on Amadeus.
Mozart.
Okay. Stella Ridge, 1 kilometre. Okay. Yeah, so I think what's happened is that the wine industry is more mature now, and so the people who are in the industry have moved on, and so we're still seeing these early adopters, and we're starting to go up the curve now. And the industry is starting to get some respectability, with the formation of associations and so forth. But there still are negative views, and I think the reason for that is that it is a competing industry. Those that are in Maybe wines might see it as competition for the land, so they want something else going in there. Competition for the land for other industries like crops, cattle. Competition against other oils like peanut oil, canola oil, sunflower oil. So there's always going to be somebody who is not happy about the situation.
At this stage of Western Australia?
This is Colin's place here. What was that?
This is Colin's place, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's one of the early adopters.
Yeah, early adopter. Doesn't like the association so much, you know.
So he's a gorilla.
He's a gorilla. Oh yeah, he's a gorilla. He's a bit like Nick, but might be a bit more aggressive actually. This fellow was a barrister, and he wanted to live out here. He's from New South Wales, and I think he'd visited here and he liked it. And he bought this property, I think, when it was pretty well, pretty cheap. But he runs a nice orchard, and he propagates the olives up there.
They're still quite young, aren't they?
Yeah, they're only about 4 or 5 years old. So, he hasn't got the latest proceeding. He hasn't got the latest Land Rover, so he's serious. Yeah. Oh, that's
We're just about out now.
yeah.
I think
What
we've
finished?
just finished well. Yeah.
That's the last season.
Yeah, today was so 1, 2.
Closed with the oil, with a few more oils on the market now.
Yeah, I've dropped my wholesale price.
Mm-hmm.
I've dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting a bit of reaction in Sydney saying you're a bit expensive and there's some others now coming out cheaper. So I dropped my price and then they double ordered.
All right.
And I've got, I just had a great order come in. Well, it was, I was phoned through while I was up at
Up
Perth.
school, yeah.
School.
Yeah.
50 bottles for
Yeah.
375 mil to
Yeah, that's
Korea.
good, isn't it? To Korea.
How many?
Korea.
50 bottles, 50 of those big ones.
Hey, you know, I
Korea.
bumped into a student from Korea, and we've got a few olive trees around the building. Korea, and she said, "Yeah." I said, "Where do you get them?" She says, "Oh, they're in all the supermarkets there." You know, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, so that's England, New York.
Yeah.
All
All right, Dan.
Yeah, right, a second.
Yeah.
You can help us, you know where
Yeah, what I thought we might do, Manuel could have a look at the olive trees.
Oh, yeah.
So should we walk out from here and have a quick look at the olive trees?
Go anywhere you like.
Yeah, okay, and then we'll catch up with you.
I'll come over.
Beautiful.
Virgin olive oil.
What's the whole package, isn't it?
Oh, for this is olive wood. Olive wood. Isn't that beautiful? You know, sugar, something like that.
And so who's Glenn Murray?
He must be a turner, you know, down there. I think I'll take a toothpick. But I mean, even little gifts like that, you know. Paperweight, that's a toothpick holder, made out of olive wood. Although he suffers from this disease, what they call a parathyroid.
Do you collect much of this material too? Books and...
Just one.
Yeah.
How much is your trays? Olive trays.
You're on olive trees or on grapes? Beyond the vines.
diary. I might just get the diary.
Yep.
They've written to you. Yeah. They want to plant olives. They're going to buy some trees from us.
Yeah. Well, I generally tell them to come here.
Ian and Monica.
Oh, yeah. I said that I know that you got those varieties, and I said, look, they're excellent. You can taste the oil.
Yeah, we'll get some better shots out in the grove, Emmanuel.
Yeah, I just
Eh?
welcome to.
Yeah, welcome to.
Is that right?
Look at this. I floored some queen.
And now I'm thinking it's Goddess Athena energy that was.
Yeah, Goddess Athena. That's
Yeah.
right.
So have you met Goddess Athena?
About that, no, Colin?
Goddess
About-
Athena.
Yeah, how he's got this statue there, costing about $18,000
Right.
to put in.
Because it was Goddess Athena who planted the first olive tree.
Yeah, well, she
struck
must have taken it from the wild to the
Have you met Goddess Athena yet?
No,
You haven't sort of encountered her?
no, I haven't run into her yet.
No?
No, Our Lady's not Goddess Athena. Our Lady is the water carrier. And what she did was she spilt the stars out across the sky to create the universe. It's our label.
Stella Ridge.
Stella Ridge. Stella
So-
being Latin for star.
Yeah.
So she's the Italian version.
Yeah.
It's got the same energy force.
Same
I think.
energy force, yeah.
yeah.
Well, do you want to
Well,
wander
look,
around?
do you have a...
You're going to eat these for lunch today.
Ah, what are they?
These are rock melon.
Yeah.
They call them golden rock melon.
Right.
That was a rotten one I pulled out this morning.
Right.
But, out of this world.
UC 1306s. Some of those had turned.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, last time I was here, it was all green. Use a tractor or use a ride-on tractor?
We've got slasher drag behind the tractor.
Yeah.
We do the edges with it.
But I don't know whether to buy a small tractor or whether to buy a ride-on mower.
You're better off getting a tractor because
yeah.
you can adapt various things to it.
To it, yeah.
Yeah, the tractor's available. I got two of them.
Yeah.
Well, this is how I did this, jumping on and off the tractor on Thursday.
You know,
In fact, I might even put it on today. Oh, I'll do it till tomorrow. They look alright.
So what are these?
Pendolino.
they've got that name because you see how they're sort of
Tree
pendulous. You know, they sort of. It's interesting how they grow their fruit inside too, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, the pendolinos.
Yeah, right in.
You know, you think that they wouldn't, but they do.
They do.
You know,
Right
so they must need little light to actually stimulate the.
When they
Is
see
it an oil olive?
It's an oil.
Oil
It's
olive.
also a pollinator. Pollinates Licino and others. Yeah.
See, normally the olives side of the tree,
Yeah.
and these ones I've noticed in particular, you get quite a lot of them, quite a lot inside in these pendolinos. You know, it might be just because it's a young tree.
When you do that, just watch where you put your hand.
Why is that?
A few wasp nests.
Are they?
Yeah. We've been bitten a few times.
Have you?
Yeah.
You know, a wasp bit me right here once, and luckily because of my pharmaceutical knowledge, I closed my eye and I thought, now what am I going to do? So I went to the cupboard. I just kept it shut like that. First thing I did, I took an antihistamine, because I had some in the cupboard. I usually keep some, and I thought, well, that's a good start. And then I put some vinegar on there, and I put some salt on there. 5 minutes later, didn't swell up, no pain, no nothing. But I was worried because I thought, you know, I didn't want to go around with an eye like this. But I've been bitten. We got around our place. We got a very biological garden at our house, you know, this stuff, you know, and they just find their...
Yeah, we've got a few nests. There's about to be anybody picking this tree.
All right, so they go for a particular tree, do they?
No, they just went, we just...
Manuel, is there anything particular?
Palestinian state. Brinksmanship is an art form in the Middle East, and once again Arafat took it to the nth, pulling out of his kamikaze dive at the weekend. It's easy to understand the frustration on both sides, even if the sticking points holding up peaceful resolution aren't at all easy. In fact, they'd stumped Solomon. Nowhere else